Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So today I'm going to do a video which is going to be first of a series of videos I'm going to do on mental health. The reason I've elected to do this series is because whilst conversation about mental health and awareness about mental health, particularly on social media, has been growing over the few years, and the growth is commendable and the issue is being talked about a lot, I find that there's a gap with regards to content about practical solutions to anyone living with mental health. You find that a lot of the conversations are big picture conversations, and these big picture conversations basically cover the issue on a large scale, but not content that targets individuals living with mental health. And so, bearing this gap in conversation, I decided to do a series of videos to basically try and begin a conversation on practical solutions to practical challenges that people living with mental health issues encounter on a day-to-day basis. So today I'm going to talk about journaling and mental health. And anyone who's been through CBT, which is a cognitive behavioral therapy, will tell you that one of the most important, but at the same time the most challenging parts of the CBT process is the demand by practitioners that you keep a journal. For a lot of us, keeping a journal is something we did whilst we were teenagers, and after a while we stopped, and now it's a habit that is difficult to pick up. Some of us never even journaled. I mean, I know, for example, I had never kept a journal growing up, so for me it was one of the most difficult things to do, but my psychologist insisted that I do it as part of the growth and healing journey. And obviously the first few weeks I was in denial about getting on that train and doing it, but I would have to confess that in my journey, journaling has perhaps been the most important aspect of my ability to live a productive life with a mental illness. So first, I'll begin by defining what a journal is with regards to mental health. A journal basically is the process of writing down one's thoughts and feelings and emotions in order to understand them clearly. That is basically the foundation of the process that is journaling. So why this is important? There are several reasons why keeping a journal is important. So what I'll do first is I'll cover the textbook reasons where any practitioner would tell you this is the importance of a journal. And then once I do that, then I'll go on to speak specifically to my experience and how journaling has been important in my journey. So if you struggle with or live with a mental illness or any mental issue, journaling gives you a level of control. What journaling does is that it helps you have control over your mental health journey. So first and foremost, a journal is a healthy way through which one can express themselves. So if you're living with a mental health challenge, with all the stigma surrounding the issue, there are very few spaces through which one can properly express themselves and their feelings without judgment. Your journal is perhaps the safest. And having said that, I'll have to say particularly that your journal is a private thing and should be treated as such. And the only person who should be able to see your journal is either a very close and trusted friend or partner in your growth challenge, your support group, or your practitioners. So what journaling does, it provides that space through which you can express yourself freely and in a healthy way. Secondly, what journaling does, it helps us prioritize problems, fears, and concerns. Now, anyone who lives with a mental health issue will tell you that most times it gets quite overwhelming because you're juggling so many balls. You're trying to be functional cognitively. You're trying to put in hours at work. You're trying to be able to socialize with people. You have a social life. You have a professional life. And juggling all this alongside challenges that come with living with mental health can be quite daunting. However, what journaling does is when you put your thoughts down to paper, you then realize which challenges are major, which challenges are minor, which ones require immediate action, which ones require maybe perhaps a more long-term approach in finding a solution. And then you are able to prioritize on what you need to begin to do the smaller tasks first. And you get an impetus from doing the smaller tasks that gives you motivation to deal with the bigger tasks and the bigger challenges. That you cannot do without putting your thoughts down on paper, because then you have no priorities. Then everything seems overwhelming, because how our mind works is that we want to solve our challenges immediately. So the only way to prioritize which issues to deal with first and which issues to deal with immediately and which ones you can wait to deal with it in a long-term manner is to put your thoughts down on paper, hence journaling. Thirdly, what journaling does, it helps you track symptoms day to day and helps you recognize your triggers. When any mental health challenge will have a myriad of symptoms, and even minus the symptoms immediate to the condition, you will have comorbids that come along with this condition. So for example, someone who has ADHD will have depression and anxiety as comorbid conditions that come along with the ADHD. So their primary issue might be the ADHD, but then they'll have to deal with anxiety, then they'll have to deal with depression, and so on and so forth. So what journaling does, it allows you a space where you can recognize what your triggers are. For example, places, people, and so on and so forth. Once you're able to recognize these triggers, it is easier to deal with them. And more importantly, it is easier to anticipate episodes and manage yourself, either to avoid those episodes altogether or deal with them as effectively as you can as they come along. So with regards to recognizing triggers, when all these things are just in your mind, it's very difficult to know, I had this episode and what triggered this reaction, or I had this challenge and what could have been the reason why I found myself in this. So you find, like, for some people, just being in large social events triggers major anxiety attacks. But it's not all events that will affect them in the same way. Social events might affect them differently from professional events, and so on and so forth. So if they keep a journal, then they're able to recognize that I do really badly in social events, or I do really badly in professional events for one reason or another. And so therefore, it makes it easier for them to plan around that and to prepare themselves to be able to exist within a social and professional context without necessarily having such contexts particularly injurious to their mental health. Lastly, what journaling does, and I just summarized all the major points into these 4 points, is it provides an opportunity for one to engage in positive self-talk and to identify and reduce the impact of negative thought patterns. I always tell people that in your mental health journey, your biggest cheerleader is yourself. And if you exist only within your head, it's very difficult to cheer yourself on, particularly when times get tough. So what a journal does is it provides a platform where one can really cheer themselves up, cheer themselves on, and write down all positive self-talk nuances that apply to them. So it becomes like a platform where you can pat yourself on the back, and it's extremely, it seems like, you know, I can just tell myself I'm okay and I'm good and I'll do better. But when you write it down, I can promise you that the impact is completely different. It's a whole different ballgame. It's more impactful, it's more effective, and it's even more efficient, because all you need to do is write 3 good things a day, 3 good things about yourself in the beginning of the day, and 3 good things that you achieved during the day. Be it whether you were able to smile when you didn't feel like smiling, be it whether you're able to impact someone's life positively, be it that you were able to have a meal when you know it was extremely difficult, that you were able to make your bed, that you were able to leave bed in the first place. So all these things, just thinking about them is one thing, but writing them down in a journal is a totally different game ball altogether. So that is the textbook. The textbook positives of journaling. Now I'll share personally my journey and how I began to journal. So when I started off my journey, I was seeing a psychologist called Lambert Oigara, and he kept insisting to me that I should keep a journal, but I found it to be such a daunting task. And thankfully, he didn't give up on me, and he actually made me start. And so I didn't, what I had wasn't a notebook and where I wrote all my thoughts. I always used to just walk around with pieces of paper, and whether it's in a matatu or in the library seated, I would just write down what I was feeling at that point. If someone stepped on me and I felt particularly angry, because at that point I had serious anger issues, instead of reacting, I would write down what I was feeling at that point, why I was angry, and why I felt what I felt at the time, and how it impacted my general well-being. And what I realized is when I wrote down, particularly in instances where I felt that I was angry, when I wrote down those instances, I came to realize that sometimes the anger wasn't so much a reaction to what had happened to me, but it was rather a reaction of how I felt the rest of the world thought and felt about me. So if someone, say, stepped on me by accident, I would feel targeted and I would get very angry because I thought they specifically chose me and chose to mess up my day. That is a journey of understanding and a journey of coming to a realization about myself that I only achieved through journaling. Now, Lambert also kept telling me one thing, that the medication that we give you is only about 30% of your treatment journey. So 70% is awareness. And to me, awareness then was just a word. But once I began journaling, what I realized, the biggest thing that journaling did for me is it gave me insight. And insight, I got to understand myself. I got to understand what I was going through. I got to understand my condition. We always depend that everyone will understand what we are going through, but it's difficult for someone to really understand what you're going through unless you understand yourself. So even in my social circle, letting people know what I was going through, I had to go fast through a journey that I had to gain insight on myself and who I was now that I had been diagnosed, and what that meant for my life going forward. So the journal was a pretty important part of that. And initially, I used to destroy whatever I wrote. I mean, I had pieces of paper, and at the end of the day, I would tear them down and tear them up and just get rid of those thoughts. But after a while, I realized that through my journal, I would be able to retrospectively learn patterns and learn how my mind works from a retrospective perspective. And now progressively, that would help me plan for situations, plan what assignments I wanted to take up, plan what activities I wanted to engage in. So in conclusion, I'm going to say that journaling might be one of the most difficult things for someone living with mental health to do, because it's a mirror, and by nature, mirrors expose the beautiful sides and the ugly sides of us. So one of the biggest fears, I think, for a lot of people with journaling, and it might be very subconscious, is that through the journal, you're going to expose pretty ugly parts about yourself. However, once you begin to do it, and once you get in the system, and once you do it regularly, because a journal is not a journal unless it's kept regularly, you begin to realize that it's very important to be alive to these ugly aspects, because these ugly aspects are part of us, whether we like it or not, but also they affect our ability to function cognitively. They affect our ability to function socially. They affect our ability to function in a professional setting. And so if you asked me, and then my journey has been, say, since 2008, if you asked me 10 years now, obviously I haven't been journaling all through, I haven't been very consistent, but the times I've done really well in life, socially, professionally, are the times when I've kept a journal. So in conclusion, I'll say that the benefits far outweigh the challenges that come with journaling. So if you're living with a mental health challenge, or you know someone who's living with a mental health challenge and they're not journaling, I would like to hope and pray that you will really encourage them, and encourage yourself, if in this case it's you, to start journaling. And in subsequent videos, I'll share some of the ways to journal very easily. It doesn't have to be conventional pen and paper. It doesn't have to be a time-consuming process. There's technology out there, there's apps, there's your phone. You could do a voice journal and just record your voice. So in the subsequent video, which will be part 2 of journaling and mental health, I'll share on some of the tips and ways to use the resources available to us in the 21st century to keep a journal. And even more importantly, those resources help you not only keep a journal, but track your moods for you, and so on and so forth. So guys, that's my short. I was hoping it would be at least 10 minutes, but it's been 15 minutes. I hope it's going to be helpful, and I hope that people will keep journals, people living with mental health, and that this will be helpful in their recovery journey. Thank you and bye, guys.